Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the Cabinet E-Series on workflow. I'm going to be talking to you this morning about manual workflow and rule-based workflow, workflowing to another user versus workflowing to a group of users. But before we get started, let's talk about why would you want your business to be using workflow? What is workflow? In its simplest form, workflow is a business process. If you think about it, every document in your business has a process. That process begins when the document is created, whether it's created by a prospect, a customer, a vendor, and sent to you, or whether you're creating the document in-house from a software such as Microsoft Word or from your accounting system. The business process of that document starts with the creation of the document or inception of the document, all the way to the point of archiving of the document. So just pick any document in your business and think about the business process of that document. That is the workflow. So when we talk about workflow in our software and why we would want to use workflow, it is to remove the paper from the business process. And what that's going to do for you is it's going to make the process more efficient, as well as speed up some of those processes. So if we can learn to move that document or that folder through the business process electronically, then we have better control and we have better management of that document or folder. So that's why you want to consider workflow and start using it in your business. All right, so let's move on to talk about the first type of workflow, which is manual workflow. Okay, so let's get started doing a manual workflow. We're just going to work in a law firm case cabinet. We're going to go into a client folder, and under the contract tab, right here we have a contract that is a Microsoft Word document. We're going to right-click the contract and go to Route. Route gives us a submenu of Private, Public, Distribute, and Distribute with Reply. Distribute is a little different from workflow. We're not going to cover that in this webinar, but we are going to talk about public and private workflow. If I click Private, the user I send this document to will have exclusive access to the document. In other words, no other user will be able to go into the folder and view the document. The most commonly used option is public. By public, we mean even though the document is in my workflow, you can still log in to SAFE, go into the client folder, and view the document. So we're going to go ahead and click that. Notice it defaults to manual, and you see rule, which are all of our workflow rules that we'll get into in a minute. So let's look at the manual workflow. I have a list of users. I have a group called contracts, a group called admin. But let's click on Sarah. Let's send this contract to Sarah and ask her to review it. All right, so we've got our note. We've got the user right here. We're going to send the document to that user. And we're going to log out and log back in as that user to see what it looks like on the other side. All right, so Sarah logs in. You'll notice there are a couple of notifications saying that she has 2 new documents, and you see one of those is the document that we sent her. Now, I think in real life, if you use workflow quite a bit and you get a lot of documents in your workflow inbox, these notifications will begin to stack up until you go start looking at those documents in your workflow. If you want to turn these notifications off, you go up to Options, and under the General tab, uncheck Enable Notifications. And that'll stop those notifications from popping up. So let's go click on the Workflow button and go into the Workflow inbox. Now you can see that we have a new document here, and that is the contract that we just routed to her. Before we click on that document to look at it, we're going to talk about setting up your workflow inbox so it's usable. Okay? What I mean by that is, what about these columns? Maybe we don't have the right columns that we would like to have. So you can right-click a column, and you can do column chooser, which brings up a little box with other columns you can put in your configuration. So let's take cabinet name, drag it up, and drop it as a column. So now we have an additional column. We can see the cabinet that the documents come out of. In my case here, I don't find that to be that useful, so I can drag that column and drop it in the customization box. Another thing you can do is you can rearrange these columns. So I could take status and drag it over to the right side and change the whole look of my inbox. So just keep those little customization tips in mind as you're setting up your workflow inbox. And I'm going to move status back over here where I like it to be. Okay, so another thing is, once we click on this document, it's going to change from new to in process. We're also going to be able to then look at the bottom and see the note that was sent with the document. So this user is asking us to review and send back. So to review the document, we could use the preview, or we can actually open the document up by clicking the edit button to open it up in its native format. Okay? Once we are finished doing that, we close it. There's other tools here we could use as well. We can email the document, we can print it, we can open the parent folder to view other documents. Okay, maybe we want to look at depositions, or maybe we want to look at insurance documents. Maybe we want to scan in a new document or create a new electronic document. All those tools are inside the folder. Could be that you need to give this client a phone call. In that case, we want to access the folder indexes, and that's going to be under Edit Folder. So this pulls up the folder index, there's the phone number, so we can give the client a call. A couple of other tools here: approve, reject. Approve in a manual workflow situation. If you do the drop down for pick item, pick a user, and click approve, it's going to send that document to that user. Now keep in mind, if you want to send that document to this user with a note, before you click approve, come to the remark box and go ahead and make your remarks and save them, and then click approve, and it'll go to that user. Since our instructions here was to please review and send back, we're going to pretend like we reviewed the document. We're going to send it back to the user who sent it to us, and we're going to click approve. Okay, so let's log out as this user and log back in as the other user. And we go into the inbox, and in this case, you can see that I have more documents in my inbox. I have rejected items, I have new items, I have a lot of items that I've already looked at that are in process. So let's look at a couple other features in our workflow that we haven't covered, like the return to sender and reject. Reject is if you're asked to approve an invoice and you want to reject it for some reason, you click reject. You are going to have to put your remarks in and save them before it's going to let you reject it. And it's going to go back to the user that sent it as a rejection. We also have return to sender. Very similar to reject, but it is more for, instead of rejecting a transaction, it's more for just returning that document to the sender because they wanted it back. It doesn't make you put in a remark. It's just going to send it back. So reject and return to sender are very similar. It's just that when we take these actions in our software, those actions are recorded in a couple of places. Number one, the audit trail in the software, and there's also a thing called workflow management where we record all these actions. So approve and reject really have dual purposes. Approve could be to approve a transaction. We just want to record it, move the document forward. Or it could be just move it forward. We're not approving a transaction, we're just moving a document to the next step in the business process. Reject could be rejecting a transaction that we've been asked to approve. Really not rejecting the document as much as we are rejecting the request to pay an invoice or to approve a purchase item or something of that nature. And then, of course, return to sender just returns it. So there's a couple other things. If I have a new item here and I click on it, and you can look at the bottom and you can see the notes that came over with this item. I may need to put this item on hold. So there is a hold button here. So before I do that, I want to let all the other users in the system know why I'm putting it on hold. So I'll put my reason why it's on hold. I'll save that. Then I go put it on hold, and you can see it changed the status to on hold. Now, if any user goes into that folder, they'll be able to know what the status is of the document, and they'll also be able to see the history of the workflow notes. And we're gonna look at that a little bit more when we talk about controlling and managing these documents. But for now, let's go look at rule-based workflow. We're going to move into group workflow. This is where you want to workflow a document to a group of users. To do that, we're going to go into a folder. We're going to go over to the Contract tab. We're going to click New and create us a contract. Once the contract opens, we're just going to close it so it's filed to the folder. Now we can right-click and route the document to the group called Contracts. This is the same manual workflow that we did when we chose a user. This time we're choosing a group called Contracts. So I'm going to click Send. Now, I want to show you in Management this contract group. You can see here's the group. We have 3 users, Bart, Sarah, and TP. All right, so let's minimize this, and let's go into each inbox and see if that document made it to that user. So I'm logged in as TP. Here's my inbox, and I'm looking for the Peter Griffin contract. Here it is. You'll notice when I click on it, the status doesn't change. It still says new. This is because I have to go up here and claim the group item. Now, once I claim it, it's going to remove it from the other user's workflow. So before I do that, let's go look at another user to make sure that it's in that user's workflow as well. Let's go look at Sarah. When Sarah logs in, she goes to her workflow, and she's looking for the same contract for Peter Griffin. Here it is. She clicks on it. It still says new. The idea is you want the user to be able to look at the document before they claim it. So if Sarah wants to claim it, she just clicks on Claim Group Item, and now you can see it's now in process in Sarah's inbox. Now, once again, we're going to change users. We're going to go back in as TP, and we're going to see if that document is still in my workflow inbox or if it has been removed. And you can see I do not have a contract for Peter Griffin anymore. Okay, so it did pull it out of my workflow because Sarah claimed it. Now there's one other way that we can do workflow. So let me open up and create another contract in this folder. Close it. It's filed in the folder. Okay, before I route this document, I'm going to go to my workflow inbox, and I'm going to go to Tools and Auto Claim Group Item. I'm going to check that. So now you see it's checked. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to route this document to the group called Contracts. Click Send. Now that document has been sent to the group. The difference is now it's back in my workflow. It was this one right here. This time when I click on it, it immediately changes to in process, and it takes it out of everyone else's workflow. So I didn't get a chance to review the document before I claimed it. So depending on what your situation is with group workflow, you may want people to be able to view the document before they claim it. Then again, you may just want them to pick documents at random and automatically claims the document for them. So that's the difference. And you can see this is originally went to the group. But once you click on it and it changes to in process, you own that document and it's no longer with those other users in the group. So to determine how you want to use group workflow, you either want this box checked to auto claim as soon as you click on a document, or unchecked so it gives us the opportunity to look at a document before we claim it. Okay, that's how group workflow works. Okay, so let's talk about rule-based workflow. I'm logged into Cabinet Management with my username and password. Once you in management, you would go to workflow rules, and it's going to show you all of the workflow rules that we have set up. I want to talk about a couple of different ways that you can set up rules. Rules can be very basic, or they can be very complex. And it all has to do with what is your business process with that document. And what we like to say is if you can map it out on paper or on a whiteboard, we can help you implement that business process with a workflow rule. So let's look at a very simple rule. This is a purchase request. And if you look at here, the steps of the rule, it's very straightforward. It's what we call a linear rule. It just goes from one user to another user, back to the originator, and then to the cabinet with no alerts. Okay? So that's a very straightforward workflow rule, where it just goes from one user to the next, back to the originator, and then they file it to the cabinet. Let's see if we can find something. Okay, here's a request for time off form. It's very similar to the linear workflow, and it does go to one user, then it goes back to the originator, and then they put it back to the cabinet. Keep in mind, it's a request for time off. So my guess is it's going to Sarah to approve it, going back to the employee to let them know that it's approved. The employee clicks approve in their inbox, and it goes to the cabinet. Now there's another step to this. There's an alert involved. So what I want to do is edit this rule, and I want to go into the alert screen of setting up a rule. This is very straightforward. It's 4 steps, and if you read, you can see that the first step is we set the status type of the document and the decision point. The decision point is the user that gets the document at the first step, second step, third step, and so forth. Those are what we call decision points. So basically what this alert says is if the status is new, which means it hasn't been looked at decision point 1, okay, then after 3 hours of having a status of new, we want to email the current user, and any action to be taken if necessary, we're not going to take any, we're not going to move it to anyone. Now we could have set this alert up to say, you know what, if it's new at decision point 1 for 3 hours, email the user and let them know, but move this document to another user. In other words, we're going to escalate this document. If this person at decision point 1 can't get to it in a timely manner, we're going to go ahead and have it leave their workflow and automatically go into another user workflow. So we can send email alerts with a rule, a workflow rule, and we can also escalate with a workflow rule. So just keep that in mind. Let's cancel this and go back to our screen. We're going to look at a couple of these rules. I'm going to demonstrate this medical record rule. Let's look at it. This is what we call a variable rule. In other words, the document is going to be routed based on what is in a folder index. You can see IDX 12 indicates folder index number 12. If it contains Bart, then it's going to go to Bart. If that index contains Sarah, it goes to Sarah, and so forth. Then after it goes to one of these users, the second step is based off of index number 13. And it's kind of the same scenario. So let me give you a look at what we're talking about here. So let's click on a folder, and if you look at the folder indexes, this is index number 12. Just count from the top, 1 through 12. This is 12, and it has Sarah. So basically what the rule was saying is, if Sarah is in index number 12, route that document to her. It's her case, okay? And then when Sarah's finished with it, it's automatically being routed to the person that's in index 13, which in this case represents the attorney. So that's called a variable workflow. So let's take a look at how that works. We will just open up this folder. We're going to go under medical records, and we're going to go ahead and create a medical record request. And I'll just create the document. Once it's created, I'm going to right-click. Here's our route, public access. Instead of manually choosing a user, I'm going to send it to this rule. Now, this may seem manual because I'm choosing the rule. There is a way that you can kick this workflow off automatically as soon as the document is created without going through this step. In this case, we're just going to send it to this rule. I have an option to put a note if I need to. I'm not going to in this case. I'm just going to click send. So now this folder, keep in mind it had Sarah listed. So that medical record request should have went to Sarah. So once again, we'll log in as Sarah. Oops, sorry about that. Try that again. I'll log in as Sarah. And we're going to look in her workflow to see if she has the medical record request, and there it is. Now I want you to notice when I click on it, it does change the in process, but look at what else has changed. We don't have the pick item drop down with all the other users. Because this is a rule, I don't really have a choice where it goes next. I just have to either approve it or reject it or return it to the sender. Still have all my other tools. So the next step of the rule is based on index 13, which is the attorney. So I'm just going to click approve, and it should leave my inbox, and it should go to whoever the attorney is, which we know it was Bart. So we're just going to log off and log back in as Bart. And we're going to go to Bart's workflow inbox. And he does have a medical record request right here from Sarah. It was part of that rule. And now you'll notice Bart is actually the last step of the rule. So we're at the end of the rule. And the end of the rule is it goes to the cabinet. So when Bart clicks approve, that document goes back into the cabinet. And of course, you can look at the bottom of any of these documents at any time and see the notes. That's going to complete our demonstration for workflow rules. So we're going to move into how to manage these workflows. Move into workflow management. Now that we've learned how to workflow documents to other users and groups, let's talk about how users and also department supervisors or business owners can sort of manage the business process or control the documents that are in the workflow. First, we're going to look at how an individual user can look at documents that have been sent through the workflow process. First thing we're going to do is open up a folder. So if you navigate into a folder and you see this icon on the document, that means it is in someone's workflow. If you right-click the document, you can trace it. Okay, this is one way you can see the history of the document. The other way you can do it is go to your own workflow inbox, go up to Tools, and Show Items You've Touched. Now, this is in case you want to go look at everything that you've sent out through workflow. Maybe you want to check and see where some of these documents are in the process. Once you open up this user workflow activity screen, you do have a date range, so you can pick a date. We'll go pick July 1st through today's date. You also have a choice of active items that are still in workflow, completed items that have made it all the way through the process and now they're filed back to the cabinet, or you can do both. We'll just do both and check out some of these documents. So we hit Get Selected, and here are all the documents that I have initiated workflow. And you can see we have on hold, rejected, we got new, we got all kinds of statuses on these documents. Let's take a look at some of these. Here's a medical record request that was put on hold. We can see the history of the document when Bart sent it to TPEAK. We can see the notes, and we can see that TPEAK has the document on hold, and he has a reason for having it on hold. If we go up and look at some other documents, here's a motion for e-discovery. We can see the history. It's currently with TPEAK. The status is new. If we look at some of the rejected, here's a meeting minutes that was rejected. And we can see the notes and the history of that document. So this is a good way for you to go through and look at, here's some things that have went through the workflow and been completed. And I'll just click down through some of these. Here's a complaint. You can see the history of it and the notes. So this is a very good way to look at things that you have sent through workflow to see where they are in the process. Now, on the other hand, if you are a supervisor, a department supervisor, or business owner, you can go into the management console. You get it to come up here. Click on management. And you have this query screen where you can put queries together. So we can actually do status, add that, and then run the query. And it's going to pull this screen up here. It's going to pull up all the documents with a new status. So these are documents that's sitting in folks' workflow that have not been looked at. All right, so we can see the status is new. We see the title of the document, the date and time it was sent, who sent the document, and who it's currently with. Now, just like in the workflow inbox, you can right-click a column and do column chooser, and maybe there's something that you want to put as a column, maybe the step of the rule. If that's important to you, you can see which step of the rule it's in. You can also drag columns back down to the customization box. Maybe you want to know what cabinet this came from, so we take cabinet and stick it up there. So then we can see the cabinet that these documents came out of. So we got a couple that looks like they're out of an HR cabinet, and we got a couple that are out of the motor vehicle accident case cabinet. There's lots of queries you can put together. We could say currently with a particular user and add that. So now we're asking the system to return to us all of the documents that have a new status that are with this user. So when we run that, it returns all of the new items they're in that user's inbox. Now, let's take it a step further. So let's just say you do determine that this document here needs to be taken care of today. You've just learned that the user that it's currently with is on vacation, and you want to go up here and click Edit, and you want to move that document to another user. So there's like 5 steps here real quickly. You take the selected item, you check user, you pick a user you want to send it to, and you can put a note. And save the note, and when you click save, it's going to move that document out of that user's inbox and go to the other user's inbox. So as a department supervisor, you can come into management and you can move documents from workflow inbox to workflow inbox depending on who needs to handle that. If you see that it's been sitting in someone's inbox and it's new, it's been sitting there too long, maybe you want to call that person and see what's going on, or maybe you just want to forward it to someone else. Another thing you can do from management, you can also look at the indexes on a folder where that document resides, and you can trace the document, so you can look at the workflow history of this document. So that's going to conclude the webinar for workflow, and I think at this time we're ready to take some questions.